Welcome to the Jennifer Awesome Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Awesome, and I'm so glad that you're here. This podcast is all about meaningful conversations that challenge the way we think, inspire the way we lead, and remind us of the power of human connection. Each episode features educators, leaders, change makers, entrepreneurs, advocates, and everyday people who are making a difference in their communities and creating lasting impact. We'll explore leadership, belonging, education, personal growth, resilience, innovation, and the stories that shape who we become. My hope is that every conversation leaves you with practical ideas, fresh perspectives, and the courage to take your next step towards becoming the person you're called to be. Whether you're leading a classroom, a business, a nonprofit, or simply striving to make a difference in the lives of those around you, you're in the right place. So grab a notebook, take a deep breath, and join us as we learn, grow, and build a world where connection comes before compliance, belonging fuels success, and ordinary people create extraordinary change. Let's dive in. All right. And thank you for tuning in to the Jennifer Awesome Podcast. We explore the ideas, people, and experiences helping students graduate with competence, confidence, and purpose, not just a diploma. Today, I'm excited to welcome Kenny Ingersoll to the show. While Kenny doesn't come from the traditional education system, which I think is a benefit in my opinion, he's an educator in one of the most important areas of life that many schools still don't spend enough time teaching: financial literacy. Kenny helps people build a healthier relationship with money, develop a stronger money mindset, and dream bigger about what's possible for their future. As a coach, financial educator, and parent, he brings a unique perspective on preparing young people for success beyond the classroom. Please welcome Kenny to the Jenni Awesome Podcast. How are you doing today, Kenny?
I'm doing good, Jennifer. Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah, so tell us a bit about yourself.
So married, have 2 kids and a couple dogs, and so life is full of adventure there. But I went through the traditional education system, graduated with a diploma, all that stuff, and then years later, I got into the financial education space, which I never saw myself in. So that's a whole nother story. But the more I learned, the more I understood what I didn't know and what was lacking out there, and the more I wanted to help others hopefully learn from, kind of along the lines of, if I'd only known then what I know now. I
Mm-hmm.
try to help people mitigate some of that and eliminate some of that in their journeys.
So you mentioned that you didn't see yourself in the financial literacy area. And I can say the fact that I became a middle school math teacher, I didn't see myself being a math teacher ever. However, like, it was the best thing that happened in my life. So tell us a bit about that. Why did you not see yourself in this area?
So I knew I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur, have a business. My parents were, so I've been bitten by that bug early on, and I've tried different things. I never fit inside the mold. I've tried different things. It worked, but it didn't quite fulfill. Even some areas I love RVing. I love traveling and stuff, and so I owned an RV salvage yard as one of them, and it was great. I loved it, but it wasn't fulfilling how I thought it would or should. I expected it to, but and then a family member introduced me to the finance industry. I'm like, no, that's not for me. But then as I dove into it and I got into it, it clicked in a way that I never thought possible, and it brought new opportunities for growth for myself, and then as well as opportunities to help others, and it just fulfilled everything and fit everything. I still love the RVing, I still love these things, but not as a business. It didn't quite fit right in that puzzle.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you were kind of following some of your passions at the time, and you took this risk on something that someone recommended to you. Like, what was that like, taking that risk?
It was eye-opening, because something I never even thought about venturing down before. Never even considered it as a business, as an occupation. And I was intrigued with learning about finances just on a personal level, and oh, that's kind of cool. That's neat to know.
Mhm.
But beyond that, it never dawned on me to pursue it further until I got into it. And then it's it's like you hear horror stories of a food. Oh, escargot. It smells, ew, disgusting. And then when you try it, or use whatever example you want, of course, but when you try
Uh-huh.
it, you're like, why didn't I try this 20 years ago? Kind of thing. You'd never thought you'd like it, or just the sound of it didn't feel right or sound right or click or whatever. But when you tasted it, when you had that first bite, you're like, there's something different about this. So you have another bite, and then you have another bite. I'm like, I love this. This is my new favorite, sort of thing. So
So what do you do in finances? What for people that don't know that that's even a possibility, can you explain to us a little bit about what you do and how you know, how that taste changed as you learned more about it?
yeah, so a quick explanation of what I do in the finance industry is helping people with like their budgeting and savings and preparing for retirement, and even through retirement, things like that. But we focus on educating and making people aware. A lot of people are only aware of, I'm an analogy guy, so I use a lot of analogies.
Nah, they're
They're only
good.
aware of
Good.
the hammer and the screwdriver in the toolbox. They don't even know that the toolbox exists, and all the other
Oh.
tools that are out there and that they have access to at their fingertips. So we broaden their horizon, so to speak. You have all these other tools that are available. Some tools are better for this job than other tools and stuff. So we make them aware of what they have access to, then educate them on how they work, so they know if that's the right tool for the job. Because it's not a one size fits all out
Mhm.
there. And then to go along with that, I also educate on money mindset. What's your relationship with money? What's your background with money? Not, oh, I have a business degree in finance or bookkeeping or whatever. It's, this is how I was raised. These are my beliefs around money since I was born, basically. So what's your background, your personal historical background with money, and your thoughts on money and how you respond to money and why? So I dive into that with a lot of people because they can grasp the concepts, but if they don't understand their relationship and why those concepts aren't working for them, it doesn't work either.
Mhm. I I heard someone talking yesterday about money. So I'm in a leadership group, and we're actually working to raise $75,000 for the Tim Tebow Foundation to support the end of child exploitation and human trafficking. So we were having a conversation, and someone had mentioned that you may think that you want to make like 40,000 dollars a year more than you actually do. However, if you don't change your relationship with the way that you feel towards the money, it's not going to actually make a difference in the way you feel. Like, you may still have that scarcity mindset even though you've hit your goal and you're making more. So I'm hearing you say that you recognize that you were going to spend time talking about like our how we relate to money when you first got into it, or was that kind of an aha as you learned more and more?
It was more of an aha as I learned more and more,
Mhm.
because I would grasp the concepts and that would help me, move to the next step. But it didn't quite get me over the hump, so to speak, of why some of those concepts weren't working,
Mhm.
for me. If I put this and this together, it should equal this, and it works for these people. But for some reason, it's not working for me. Some reason, it's not working for them. What's going on? And so that's when I dove into it more. And then also going along with the study of the mind, I did a lot of study of Bob Proctor and the
Mhm.
conscious and subconscious mind and paradigm and stuff. So those two correlated and went hand in hand for me. And it's like, oh, if I learn this over here, it applies over here, then I can learn this over here and apply it over here. And so it's kind of an ongoing aha moment ever since.
So if I like if I'm listening to this podcast right now and I'm just starting to have that what money is relational, like there's something to the way that I relate and I have unconscious thoughts about money, like what are some things that you could guide our listenings through just as some of that wow, this is really true, that having that aha moment right now.
Yeah, they just a simple self analysis. If you see a price tag on something, what's your first response? You know, if you want to buy a new truck and
Mhm.
you see the price tag, what's your first response? Is it, oh my gosh, or is it, okay, I'll figure it out. It's gonna happen. You know, and then specifically to the relationship side, it could be used or related to compared to, if you will, people relationship. You know, what's your relationship like with your mom versus the delivery driver that brought your package that you ordered off on the internet, whatever,
Mhm.
versus the person at the checkout stand. How are those relationships different? You can compare that and use that similarly with money. How it- how do you treat money in this atmosphere or in this atmosphere? Because if you're, for example, if you're paying bills or going to get gas for your car, oh my gosh, that's so expensive. Why is gas prices so high or whatever? Gas is, let's call it $4 a gallon, just to throw a number at it.
Mhm.
But when you're on vacation or on a cruise, oh, that drink is only $8. Okay, no big deal. You know, your
Yeah.
atmosphere can change your money and how you're thinking and the environment you're in and
Hmm.
all those sorts of things and the value you perceive out of that thing or the enjoyment. Um, you enjoy that drink, so you it might be worth $8. Whereas getting a gallon of gas, you see it as just an expense per se. So there's a lot of ways you can relate that to yourself. But
It's like that made me think about the few times where I've gotten like a coffee or something and it was just awful. Like how much I didn't enjoy it. And so I put that story on there of, man, this coffee really wasn't worth it. And I think that's what I hear you saying is that, if you have that negative experience with it, you end up relating it back to your relationship with the money too.
yeah, exactly. What is your perceived value or enjoyment out of it?
So this has got me thinking of, because I know you said you have kids, and I'm thinking of, so what things did I grow up hearing about money? Like what did my parents model? What did my grandparents model? And then I think about, well, I spent what, 8 hours a day with my teachers, and they never talked about money either. Like money wasn't something that ever came up. So if we were to look at, kids, what are some of the things that we could do as adults around children to help them have that better relationship with money from a young age?
Just being open about it, you know, or appropriate. Like my kids are involved with a lot of the conversations, or they understand some of the details. They don't understand every single detail and all the backstory and how all the back end stuff works or whatever, but they're part of some of the conversations and they go shopping with us so they can see, okay, you want this, and this is what it is, and so they can experience that. And then we try to have open conversations about things. They're part of the planning, whether that's vacation planning or schedules for the week or whatever. So okay, we need to for this activity or to go to this place we need this, this, and this is what it's going to cost. So, is that what you want to do? Blah, blah, blah. So, just being open about it and
Mhm.
then having them feel comfortable about it and then giving them opportunities to, when appropriate, earn money and spend money on things. Okay. So they understand how money works and where it comes from and how to be disciplined and set aside for what you want or, okay, yeah, even starting a small budget for themselves.
Oh, that's cool. How old are your kids?
So I've got a 13-year-old and a 6-month-old. So
Oh.
the 6-month-old isn't part of the conversation yet, but the 13-year-old is.
Excellent. So 13-year-old middle schooler, probably starting to get more into like, school dances, way they look, going to activities. So you said they're starting to budget. Are you having those conversations with them to
Oh,
start
yep.
doing budgets at this age?
So we're not like a structured budget for him. We don't have that in place yet, but we have, okay, this is what you've got in your account right now. You
Mhm.
know, if you put it towards this, you'll have this much left, or if you want to save it and put it towards this, or like for example, there's a an event he wants to go to, and so we talk about okay, it's gonna the tickets are this much, and we got hotel and travel, so you got to start saving up for that and putting towards that, and if you want to buy things there,
Mhm.
or even when we go on a cruise, we like to cruise a lot. Okay, if you want some spending money, mom and dad will cover some of it, but if you want on top of that, you need to start setting that aside. So the budgeting principles is what we're working on right now. He doesn't have like a set budget per se, but just the principles and the concepts and the experience with the budgeting principles.
So you mentioned that you've coached people through like writing a basic budget and you're doing this with your son. What are some of the basics if someone's thinking about writing a budget for the first time? And I know some people have a negative connotation towards the word budget. I personally think it's freeing to be able to say, "Hey, here's what my money's going to do," instead of it just doing what it does.
Yeah, one of the things we start with is what's our mindset about, because that's a good example. If you hear budget and it's got a sour taste in your mouth, you're
Yeah.
not going to want to stick to it no matter how fancy or whatever it is. But if we can change that and make it positive and uplifting,
Mhm.
and that's going to help them want to stick on that budget even more. And then we decide, well, they decide, not me. They decide what's important, what they want in that budget. And another thing is a lot of people think they can only have a certain amount of things in their budget, certain categories. A lot of people they think they can't have like vacations in their budget or spending
Really?
money or leisure money kind of thing. It has to be house, bills, car, clothes, food, very, very basics.
Mhm.
They don't think outside of that can go into budget sometimes. Not everybody, but some of my clients
Yeah.
have that. So opening that up, like you can put whatever you want in your budget. Your budget is so big though, so something's got to give over here. So what's your priorities? And again, going back to that mindset and what their priorities are. Because if your priority is over here and you're trying to work on a budget for this priority over here, it's not going to happen.
Mhm. So what do you think one of the why do we as and I may be overgeneralizing, but why do we as a society have such a negative belief around budgets and around money?
Because negativity is so much more popular, I guess. It sells more than
Yep. Yeah.
positivity, and you know we're we're drawn to it easier if we're not careful because we've been conditioned over hundreds of years.
Mhm.
Great, 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 great grandparents, they got a little bit and then they added that to theirs and then they added that and then they added that. So over lots of time, we've been conditioned to that. And so it's hard to get out of that cycle. And
Mhm.
then and like attracts like. So if you're looking for negative, or you're talking about negative things, or you're talking to negative people, or whatever, it's going to attract more negative, just like magnets. But if you start to reverse that into the positive side, it's going to start attracting positive. So, um, long answer for your question of that's how we are around money and budgeting and stuff is this. Grandpa had a horrible experience one time way back in 85 years ago, and it's still affecting us today.
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear that. Like I don't so my grandfather, he owned a shoe store and I knew that he owned a shoe store. He was fairly successful. But he never talked about money either. Like I keep thinking about my family and I don't know that anyone in my family has ever written a budget. I wouldn't know because they don't talk about it. So to hear that you're talking to your son and it's a family thing that you guys are sitting down doing this budget and by making it a family, open conversation that breaks through a lot of the I'm going to call it intergenerational negativity that we have as a society.
So yeah, it only takes one person to start that change.
So, if someone was to want to sit down and look at a budget for the first time, like, would you recommend that maybe they do some check? I'm going to say check their attitude, make sure they're in a good mindset, or if they like start to feel overwhelmed or negative, do you have suggestions for them to, kind of break through, keep it positive, and power through?
Before we continue today's episode, I want to take a moment to talk about a mission that has become incredibly important to me. Every child deserves to grow up feeling safe, protected, valued, and free. Unfortunately, children around the world are being exploited and trafficked every day. And I don't believe we can simply hear about it, feel terrible, and move on. We have a collective responsibility to do something, to act. That's why I'm raising funds to support the fight against child trafficking and child exploitation, and the organizations working to identify vulnerable children, rescue victims, and help survivors rebuild their lives. And you can do something. You can be a valuable part of this mission and this work as well. You don't have to have thousands of dollars and you don't have to be an expert. You simply have the opportunity to decide that protecting children matters. Donate. Share the mission. Start a conversation. Pay attention. Use your voice. Because when enough ordinary people decide that protecting children is our responsibility, extraordinary change becomes possible. If you'd like to stand with me, visit community.timtebowfoundation.org/fundraiser 737-1026. Together, we can turn awareness into action, hope into impact, and create a world where children are protected. Protecting children is everyone's responsibility, and it starts with us.
Yeah, so just start with something simple. You don't have to go buy any fancy software or anything. Even this napkin and a pencil would work, or a simple
Hmm.
spreadsheet if you want, or whatever. Oh, we got some thunder going on.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and just maybe start with something simple. Maybe just 3 line items or whatever. Budget for this, this, and this, and then see how it goes. And what's their response? Yeah, ask them to do a self-evaluation, if you will. Okay, when I think of budget, and even write those questions down. What are my thoughts on budgets? Why do I want a budget? What's my goal with a budget? Just to start to do that self-evaluation, then we can see where the underlying objection is, towards a
Mhm.
budget, or why they haven't started a budget yet, or why they don't want to stick to the budget, finding those underlying things and start working on those. And then we can work towards actually creating a budget that works for them, that they'll be able to stick to and want to stick to.
Yeah. So you also mentioned that some people out there uh, feel that they have to really limit what they put in their budget, that it's very like strict. I'm going to cover my four walls and that's it. So, what are some areas that you typically tell people, hey, you can add in that vacation, the spending money? You've already said a couple, but what are some areas that maybe people don't recognize or that can help bring in some of that? Let me dream for my future in my budget.
Um, Again, depending on the mindset, just baby steps. Okay, what's something you want? If you had a magic wand, and that's something you wanted to do next week, or you could, I'd hand you a ticket to anywhere for the weekend, just kind of get them dreaming again. And okay, let's start putting that in the budget, and then that way that starts a process of dreaming, of thinking, of getting outside that box, if you will,
Hmm.
and just exploring those opportunities and possibilities.
So earlier, I want to go back to you were talking about the hammer and the screwdriver, and that some people don't even realize there's a toolbox. What are some of the tools that are out there that maybe people just aren't aware of? Like, I knew I had a savings account, a checking account. You could invest, but that was kind of my basics starting out of what I knew about.
Yeah. Um, for example, there's all sorts of different budgeting methods. Some people again use the spreadsheets.
What's the 10-10-10-70?
So it's 10% to a charity, 10% to long-term savings, 10% to short-term savings, and then 70% is your lifestyle. So you live
Okay.
on everything else. That includes vacations, mortgage, gas, all that stuff. That's just one of the many methods. So just knowing that there's several methods of budgeting. Some people like
Mhm.
the envelope method. Um, that's where you put certain dollar amount in different envelopes. Okay, this envelope is for groceries. This envelope is for gas. And once that money's gone, it's gone.
Mhm.
So just understanding there's lots of different things. Um, Another example, and by no means is this advice or suggestions or anything like that, is a lot of people when they're at work, all they know about for retirement is 401ks.
Mhm.
Now, again, to make myself clear, 401ks are great. They have their place. There's nothing wrong with them. This is not to imply anything negative towards them, but there's many other options beyond the 401k if it's applicable for them. Because a
Mhm.
401k is not a one size fits all, and neither are all these other tools. So those are some examples of more things in the toolbox they have access to.
Yeah, so I know one that was big for me way back when I first got out of high school. They talked about what a IRA was, that there was a Roth IRA, and I started learning like a little bit about some of the different like tax deferments, the coats or sweaters that you put around your money, things along those lines, and I know that was kind of an eye opener for me because it was more than just, hey, you're putting it in savings, and kind of the idea of ways you can actually put your money to work for you instead of just sitting there in savings.
Yep, exactly. So those are some great examples. And then knowing how they work and if they're really doing what you're hoping them to do. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of people that get to retirement with this tool and they thought it was doing XYZ, but it's really down here at ABC. And
Yeah.
so retirement, they're like, oh crap, now what?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you could envision for um our next generation coming up. So the let's talk about the high schoolers that just graduated or they're going to graduate next year. What level of financial literacy would you dream that they would have? What would they know walking out of high school? What would that financial literacy graduation requirement be?
Um, I don't know if I'd have a name for a level per se, but I would say it would be great for them to have their retirement planning already started, if not already going. So thinking that far ahead at that young of
Yeah.
an age. So I don't
Yeah,
know if that qualifies or counts as a level, but
that's
that's
well,
where
that's
I would want
it's
them to be.
huge. That's a huge, like, even for me, a mindset shift of, so my one of my daughters just graduated this year, and she was at the point of at graduation, "Oh, I'm just going to apply for a job." Where you're saying we get to have our kids shift from, "I'm going to apply to be in the workforce when I graduate," to, "I'm already in the workforce. I'm planning to retire when they graduate."
So, or at least have their retirement process, maybe they're not retiring when they graduate, but okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to, this is, and I understand they're not, maybe not sure exactly what they want or what that tells, but at least be thinking about retirement and getting things in place and looking into it. Okay, I want to retire at this age. This is kind of what I have in mind for how I want to live and where I want to live. But having
Mhm.
like that goal already in mind and putting the action steps in place towards getting there.
Because I think one of the things that isn't stressed enough, and being a middle school math teacher and briefly touching on financial math for about 3 to 4 weeks in the curriculum I taught for a few years, um, there's not a lot of understanding put out there on the idea of time when it comes to compound interest, and that the time to plan for retirement is when you're younger, because it's that time aspect. Because if you don't start planning until you're 50, 60, you've missed that whole time element to let the compound interest work.
Yep, exactly. Big opportunity, and a lot of people aren't even thinking about that or um have any idea that it has that big of an impact.
Mhm. So how are some ways that, like, teachers could incorporate some financial literacy into their curriculum? Let's say that, they don't have books or anything that really teaches how to do financial literacy. What would you recommend for teachers?
So again, depending on the age level and where their comprehension level and stuff, I can start with simple concepts, like under what financial literacy is, or maybe talk a little bit about money mindset and understanding the relationship, but also the rule of 72, you know, um, and compounding interest. Just use basic, simple examples for those age appropriately or whatever and stuff, and just start planting those seeds and then helping them grow as those students age.
So I've heard the rule of 72 a couple times lately. Can you give me a brief understanding of what the rule of 72 is?
So, yeah, very simple. It's tied directly with compound interest. It's basically you take the interest rate you're earning on whatever money, divide that into 72, and that's roughly how long money will in that account will take to double. You
Okay.
know, so an example of just briefly, if a 29-year-old puts $10,000 in a bank and they're earning 1% interest on that,
Mhm.
it's going to take 72 years for that money to double.
Gotcha.
So you change the interest rate. So instead of earning 1%, let's say you're earning 4 or 6 or 10%, it's going to have a huge impact on the outcome.
All right. So you coach people to dream bigger through their finances. Why do you believe that having that bigger dream, opening that up, why is that so important to people?
Because I believe we were put on earth with a God given gift to do something great with our lives.
Mhm.
The gift is going to be different and the purpose is going to be different for everybody. And in so doing, living up to that potential requires us to dream, you know, and go for it and have those experiences and help those people and learn that knowledge and apply that knowledge. So dreaming bigger helps push us to become better people as well. So as I was dreaming bigger, I was starting to learn more and understand more and help people more. So it helped me become a better person so that I could help someone else and just help everybody, a ripple effect if we let it.
Yeah, so it sounds like that seed was planted in you, that fire was ignited, and you've been able to be more of a servant leader and share what you've learned and plant that seed in others.
So exactly, that's what I hope to do every day.
So I'm thinking about this with if we were to be out in the world and recognize that any person we walk into has that financial confidence, like do you think that that would create more opportunities and freedom for our society?
Oh, absolutely. It would create opportunities that we can't even fathom right now, I believe.
Mhm.
And opportunities in also different areas, not just financial opportunities, but growth opportunities, exploration. Um, Again, I think, just looking at history, um, if if Elon Musk, let's take him for example, with SpaceX and discovering and everything,
Mhm.
if he went back to George Washington or whoever and told George Washington what he knows now, where do you think we would be when he got back to 2026?
Oh man. We would
You
be
know,
so far past that.
yeah, exactly. So if we use that in a positive manner, it would, because 50 years ago, 60 years ago, whatever, maybe 100 years ago, I'm not sure exactly, but we had no thought even of making it to the moon or
Mhm.
making it to Mars. And now look at us today, so if we use that and grew that even more, because there's Elon Musk is only one man. So if there were 7 billion Elon Musks, again, just using him as an example, in
Mhm.
this world, what other potential and possibilities could there be in this world? And
Yeah,
even
that
not in this world, but out of this world.
yeah, and that makes me think of like an exponential growth model of like if we're here and we're going this much, well, if we were here, how much higher would we be? How much more would we grow?
Yeah,
That's
exactly. Compound
that,
interest and growth.
yeah, that's such a beautiful idea. Um, can you share a success story of someone whose life has changed because they shifted their relationship with money?
So, yeah, I can use myself as an example.
Yeah.
Um, I used to hate budgets, going back to budgeting,
Hmm.
and money would disappear. Poof! Then I had more month at the end of the money, and I didn't understand where it was going, and I always hated it, and go, I was negative, and the whole retail therapy, and more negative, and retail therapy, and all that stuff until I understood my relationship with money and where it was. And the biggest thing that helped me was understanding the power I was giving to money, or giving to
Hmm.
this, or giving to that. And when I recognized and learned that I could take that power back and I had control over that,
Hmm.
that was game changer. Now I can, okay, money is not my master. I am its master. I want this money to do this. I want this money to do this. I'm going to help my kids and my grandkids and 12 generations. People 500 years from now will know my name. Oh,
That's beautiful. Because of this change that you made, you have changed your family tree. Yeah.
exactly. And 10 years ago, I had no idea how to do that, even was possible, or even that far out. I'm like, yeah, I can help my kids do better than me. I want to do that. But thinking beyond that wasn't in my realm years ago. So growth all around.
So how long did it take you roughly from that like first frustrating man I don't want to do this budget type of mindset to how long did it take you to really get into the swing of writing a budget of controlling your money instead of it controlling you? How long did that take?
So for me, it took a few years because I was very stubborn and I'd want to change, but I didn't want to change at the same time. I really liked my comfort bubble.
Oh yeah.
And so it just took a while to get out of that. And then I'd learn a teeny bit more. And then I just learned very, very slowly. Sometimes it took a while. So it it just took me a lot longer than it could have if I wasn't so stubborn and wasn't so set in my ways or what I was if I was more willing to put in that discipline and work and give it
Mhm.
more of an opportunity each time instead of just the little bit of effort I did at start.
So if somebody feels like they're too far behind, where would you tell them to start?
I would tell them first off that they're not too far behind. It's still possible, and then just take the first step. Just I would work on the mindset would be the biggest thing because if they think they're too far behind, then a budget's not going to help them at the moment. They've got
Mhm.
to work on the belief. Okay, maybe you think you're too far behind here. What about this? Can we take this baby step over here? And then can we take this next baby step? Just um, let's say paying off debt. Let's say they've got $10,000 in debt and they're overwhelmed and they're too far behind. They can't keep up, whatever. Okay, don't worry about the $10,000. Let's focus on this 25 bucks right here.
Yeah, it's that next the same way you eat an elephant is one bite at a time, those that small amount. Do you focus
Exactly.
on finding like the small wins first?
Oftentimes, yeah, the big goal and the small wins simultaneously. All right, you've
Mhm.
made that win. Let's go to the next win.
Yeah, so for our listeners out there, are there any books or websites or resources that you would recommend to them to further their own financial literacy journey?
Oh, a few that I would recommend. Um, I'm a big Grant Cardone fan. He's got a lot of good um financial thought process information. The
Mhm.
dreaming big and the thinking bigger and going after and stuff. And then the other thing I would say would be like Bob Proctor would be a big one for the actual how the mind works and how the paradigms form and how you can shift them and the subconscious mind. I would start with like Bob Proctor and then maybe like a Grant Cardone on a lot of his financial stuff.
Mhm.
So I know there's not going to be a one size fits all, of course, for everybody, but those are two places that I would start. And then,
And if any of our listeners wanted to get a hold of you, if they really liked, kind of your process, if they had any interest in working with you, how would they get a hold of you?
oh, simplest way is IngersollEnterprises.com. That's got all my contact and social media stuff on it. So,
Excellent. So, is there anything else that we haven't covered so far because we're getting closer to time? Is there anything else that you would like to share that we haven't discussed so far?
um, the only thing that comes to mind, and we touched on it a little bit, is you're
Mhm.
not too far behind. It is possible for you, and start now.
Just take that next step.
Take that next step. Read that book, watch that YouTube video, ask someone who's where you want to be, whatever that next step might look like for you. Call me, go rent or go check out that book from the library. There's several possibilities you could do, but just start now.
Yeah, that aspect of time too, with especially if you're going to get into interest or you're trying to get out of debt with interest, like that time aspect has a huge part on our finances.
Absolutely.
All right. So, um who was somebody that helped you become who you are today? And do you want to give them a little bit of love and give them a shout out?
Ooh, there's so many. Well, of course, my heavenly Father, and then my wife, Jillian. I I would not be here without either of them. So I'd have to I'd have to tell you those two.
That's lovely. Let's see. So let's imagine that there's a teacher out there who decides that they want to use this podcast to help them have a conversation with their kids about financial literacy and why it's important and how it's going to change their futures. What would you like to say directly to those kids?
First off, great job for wanting to help others, help the younger generations, and then yeah, anything that on this podcast that you find helpful, and just relate it to the age and tie it to their interests, tie it to their wants and current desires. Again, going back, if my son is focused over here and he likes these things, his eyes are going to glaze over if I'm talking about these things over here.
Mhm.
Or, if we're talking about budgeting for this over here, but he wants to budget for this over here, make it more interesting and intriguing and desirable for them to get to.
Yeah, that just gave me a thought of if because I know kids still love playing Minecraft, say that they want to create a budget for how they're gonna buy or build all those little pieces to build their Minecraft hut, house, whatever they're building. Like, give them that opportunity. If they wanna learn how to budget through Minecraft, let them do that. If they wanna do it through spreadsheets because they love spreadsheets, let them do it that way. Like, there's no wrong entry point to learn how to budget.
Yeah, absolutely. Just starting somewhere and applying the principles.
All right. So, my closing question for you, Kenny, if you had the opportunity to change one thing about education, families, or our community that would have the greatest positive impact on the next generation, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a hard one to answer with a single answer. I think pouring more belief and encouragement into people, whatever the topic is, would be the answer for that.
I love it. Well, Kenny, thank you so much for coming on to the Jennifer Awesome podcast. It was wonderful to speak with you.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jennifer. I was honored to be here.
And can you tell us your website again one more time?
IngersollEnterprises.com. All one
Uh,
word, IngersollEnterprises.com. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for tuning in to the Jennifer Awesome podcast. We will see you next time.